I was just saying that very warm welcome to the Oxford Bookstore. I don't know how many of you are aware of the fact that we are celebrating 100 years of the Oxford Bookstore. And yes, that deserves a clap. Which I think is a remarkable, wonderful achievement. And this bookstore, as we will hear more about today, has really been part of the sort of fabric of the city, in terms of a lot of people who have passed through its doors and browsed and learned many, many things here. And we'll hear a little more from the three people who are going to be part of today's program. We are doing this event today as a curtain raiser for the APJ Kolkata Literary Festival, which this year is being presented in partnership with the Indian Museum. So we're going to do the entire festival at the Indian Museum, and I hope to see a similar crowd there every single day. We will soon be announcing the program. The festival will start on the 12th of January and it will run till the 15th of January. Shashi Tharoor very kindly agreed that he would spend some time with us at the Oxford Bookstore. He has a long association with it, and he said he'll do this as a curtain raiser. And we were very, very lucky to have Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee in town, and he agreed to be part of this event and to do the interactive discussion with Dr. Shashi Tharoor. Now, as you can tell from the empty seats in front of you, we are still waiting for Shashi Tharoor to arrive. In the meantime, I thought, let me start by somebody doesn't, it's back. Let me start by at least getting the introductions out of the way. Now, many of you have probably been introduced that he is a very highly regarded author, a best-selling author of 24 books, maybe more, both fiction and non-fiction. He's a noted critic, he's a columnist, and his most recent book, which he has been promoting in Calcutta, is Ambedkar, A Life. He is a former Under-Secretary of the United Nations, a former Minister of State for Human Resource Development, and Minister of State for External Affairs in the Government of India. He balances both his lives, the life of the author and the thinker, and the life of the politician and the statesman, quite adeptly. In his third term, he is the longest-serving member of the Lok Sabha from Thiruvananthapuram and has chaired Parliament's standing committees on external affairs and on information technology. He has also won numerous literary awards, including the Sahitya Academy Award, the Ramnath Goenka Award for Excellence in Non-Fiction Books, the Commonwealth Writers' Prize, and the Crossword Lifetime Achievement Award. He was honoured as New Age Politician of the Year by NDTV in 2010, and he won the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman, India's highest honour for overseas Indians, in 2004. So we will give him a big round of applause when he walks in. Meanwhile, I'd like to introduce Professor Rudrangshu and Professor of History at Ashoka University, of which he was the founding Vice Chancellor. He taught earlier in the Department of History, Calcutta University. He has also held visiting appointments at Princeton University, Manchester University, and the University of California, Santa Cruz. From 1993 to 2014, he was the editorial pages of the Telegraph, and I'm sure many of you have seen his byline over and over again during that decade. He is the author of many books, too many to list here, as I was telling him earlier. Most recently, Tagore and Gandhi, Walking Alone, Walking Together. The third person who we're going to have the pleasure of meeting this evening and listening to is Ishaan Tharoor. Ishaan is a columnist on the foreign desk of the Washington Post, where he authors the Today's World View newsletter and column. He previously was a senior editor and correspondent at Time magazine. I thought the stir meant that he had come. Based first in Hong Kong and later, I invite Dr. Rudrangshu Mukherjee. he went to Presidency College, he was a young student here. Can I please request silence? Please, ek to silence, please. Thank you. He was a student here, and we'll know from him a little more what his association with Oxford Bookstore over the years has been. Dr. Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with Oxford Bookstore?
Thanks, Anjum. I know I'm playing Hamlet without the Prince of Denmark. Shashi is still not here, and he's the principal attraction, but it's an honor nonetheless to be present at the Oxford Bookstore on its centenary celebrations and to be part of the curtain raiser. My relationship with the Oxford Bookstore goes a very long way back. Some of you in this audience may not have been born then even. There are three as I look back, I was thinking about my relationship with this institution. There are at least three interrelated phases of my relationship. And one is when I was a child, growing boy in Calcutta, who, because of the influence of his father, had developed a passion for reading. And hi, Shashi.
Hi. The traffic was pretty grim.
All the front rows is kind of
I couldn't buy the books that I wanted to read. So there was the Oxford Children's Lending Library at the very far end of this long bookshop. And that's where I actually started picking up books like the Billy Bunter series, the Biggin series, the William series, and so on. These were the staples of my childhood. That's how I became a reader. And most of these books came from the Oxford Bookstore. So that is a very, very enduring and a very important memory that I have of this institution. And I don't know where those books went. I hope they went pulped when the Children's Lending Library was disbanded. The second was when I had become a college student in Presidency, and I had started buying books. I could then afford to buy books, and books were then not as expensive as they are now. And of course, College Street was full of bookshops, but there was a problem with those bookshops. You had to know exactly what you wanted to buy. If you went to a bookshop like Dasgupta, which was probably Calcutta's most famous and most old bookshop, you had to tell them, I want Shashi Tharoor's book on Ambedkar. Do you have it? And they would then go back into the shelf, the salesman, and then bring it out and give it to you. So, but if you were not sure about what you wanted to buy, then Dasgupta was no good for you. There were only two places in Calcutta then where you could browse. One was the Rupa showroom next to the College Street Coffee House on the first floor where you could browse, and the other was Oxford Bookstore. And while Rupa had the paperbacks, the Penguin, the Pan books, the Fontana series, and so on, this is the place where you came, where you wanted to look at the university imprints. University of Chicago Press, Cambridge University Press, Oxford University Press, and so on. Much of which was very heavy-duty reading for students who were trying to study history or political science and so on. And so that was the second phase. And the third phase was when this bookstore refashioned itself, thanks to my mother, into a place to hold events like this. And I was more than an occasional speaker, visitor, panelist to come and come to this, if you can call it an auditorium, and then interact with authors, sometimes about my own books, sometimes about other people's books, and so on. So these are the three phases of my relationship with Oxford. I cherish those memories, and in a city where institutions are fading away very fast, I hope Oxford has a second centenary, which I of course will not be there to celebrate.
Have such a long such a long childhood and adolescence here. I was in Calcutta class 9 to 11, and during those years, I must confess I was spoiled by the St. Xavier's College School Library, the Saturday Club Library that my father belonged to, and of course friends whose bookshelves I used to browse and devour. Hello, my granddaughter has come to listen. Wonderful. But anyway, so just to say that at the end of the day, I do share with you two other memories. I did come and buy a few books, which is why I know Oxford Bookshop. Then I had an intermediate phase when I came as a parent, because we used to come to Calcutta for holidays every year, and my kids were absolutely devouring books, and we used to get them from the Oxford Bookshop. And then the third phase for me was your third phase as well, coming here for events. I've done one with my son Kanishk when he brought out his book of short stories. I've done other things with Mena, and now I'm so pleased that Ishaan, my other, his Kanishk twin, my son Ishaan, is also here. So this is a venue one knows well. I've done all sorts of discussions. I think there was a book on the Bangladesh War by our friend Salil Tripathi. He had come. There were lots of books that one has done here on visits to Calcutta. And it remains a brand that I care about enough that when they invited me to initially chair and then be on the jury of the Oxford Book Cover Prize, I have agreed to do so, and I've been serving every year for the last 4 or 5 years. So, Mena, well done, and keep up the great work, and let Oxford always be here.
Thanks to you, thanks to Calcutta, thanks to people of Calcutta.
Thank you.
Absolutely, well said.
Thanks so much, Shashi, for that. I thought before we launch into the discussion on the books, I would love to invite Ishaan Tharoor to share his memories of Oxford Bookstore with us, of which I believe there are a few. He was pleased enough.
Traffic, and but it's such a delight to be speaking here. My family is here. My 1-year-old daughter, she's soon to be 14 months actually, is sitting in the front.
In an India cricket t-shirt.
The fourth generation of our family to come to Oxford Bookstore. I have a number of phases here as well. I think my mother would bring my twin brother and me here as kids when there was a library as part of the Oxford book setup, and we at that stage we were 6, 7 years old, 5, 6, 7 years old, living in the US and coming here in the summer and devouring Enid Blyton books in particular, the whole succession of alliterated book titles. And I'm sure some of you know, Five Fine Doubters and all that, the Rat-a-tat, the famous Five. And it was always quite surreal because this would be part of our entire summer imagination, and then we'd go back to the States where not a soul has heard of Enid Blyton. No American child grows up with any of this. And for a very long time, Calcutta was for us a place of letters. Obviously, we have parents who both make their livings reading and writing in various forms. But Calcutta and Calcutta summers, and summers spent largely here, or coming here frequently, really built our imagination. From Enid Blyton there was a collection of Persian folk tales adapted from the Shahnameh, which we both loved so much. We borrowed from the library, and that went on to, I think, influence my brother's collection of short stories thereafter. In years later, I began my journalistic career in Hong Kong for Time magazine, but I moved there with this edition printed here and sold at Oxford Bookstore of these 19th century travelogues that are these beautiful 19th century books redone in old binding, and you can buy them. I'm not sure if they're still here or not. But one book was, there was an amazing collection of tales by Ibn Battuta, and the second book was this tremendous 19th century British colonial travelogue from Kashmir to Kashgar in what is now China. And I had that in my rucksack when I, as a journalist, was in Xinjiang over a decade ago. And a Chinese official was rifling through my belongings, and he pulls out this book that has a large Oxford Bookstore stamp on it, with this sort of knife design, and a British official, 19th century recollections of traveling from Kashmir to Kashgar. and he was incredibly dubious. What is this? Who goes from Kashmir to Kashmir now? And but so Oxford has been with me in many places, and it's again such a delight to be here. I'm part of a century of stories. My daughter's name, by the way, is Kahani. So we're delighted to be here.
Well done.
Thank you very much.